Do I mind if my clients drink when I tattoo them? For a while, I didn't think I did until I tattooed a couple clients who drank a little bit too much and just was not able to sit or was jumping around, standing up in the middle of a tattoo.
Yeah, totally. That's a no-no. There's maybe a couple of points at conventions where we're all pretty relaxed, and maybe my client wants to have a beer and we're really close to the end, then I'll be okay with that. But in the studio, if there's any alcohol, it's a no. If I'm not allowed to drink, neither are they.
Sometimes I encourage my clients to drink when they get tattooed. Well, sometimes I'm tattooed in like an environment where it's not like a street shop, or we're in the back room somewhere. Some shops, I work at some really cool shops where we're tucked away in a back room, and they have beer in the shop.
I don't mind if it's a little bit. No, it's just the heavy drinking that kind of tends to make them move around, act too crazy. So I don't mind drinking.
I don't mind if my clients have a drink, but please don't be drunk. In addition to any issues with thin blood, drunk people just tend to not be fun to be around when you're not drunk. It's just one of those things, and I don't want to smell vodka breath while I'm tattooing you.
Depends on really where I'm tattooing them, I guess. Because some of my clients are really heavily tattooed, and they're getting their inner armpit tattooed, or their inner thigh, or just some place that's gonna suck, and anything that's gonna keep them relaxed a little bit more. If they're a collector and they have a bunch of tattoos, yeah, I don't see the reason why, a drink or two wouldn't be a bad idea. And if somebody walks in with a 12 pack, I'm gonna be all like, whoa, 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 slugger, slow down, you know what I mean? But that's not usually the case, and most of the time those are committed clients, so it's okay sometimes.
It's very mental and physical, and I'm sure it does relax people, but they become more mindless that way, and they'll start moving around and everything, and that gets a bit difficult. I'm a very tight tattooer, so I barely touch the skin, and I want to make sure that if they move, it won't mess it up,
Like drink alcohol? We don't have any booze at the shop. Well, for artists or clients, there's no drugs, no booze while we're tattooing them. I think that's a very Canadian thing. I don't even think we're allowed to have booze inside the shop. So it's also, when you're doing it, you want to make sure your client's making the decision. They don't come in drunk and get something stupid. If it was a buddy of mine or something like that, I wouldn't care if he had a couple beers before, but, we don't really tattoo while we're drinking. Or
if people ask if they can drink while I'm tattooing them, of course, I don't discourage them. I encourage them more than I discourage them, The only problem with drinking, getting tattooed, if people drink a lot, they'll talk more. And when people are talking more when they're drinking, they tend to talk with their hands more, so they move more than they would. It's like, man, can you just not move your hands, And then they'll do it again, because they don't know they're doing it, And when their hand's moving, they don't realize, but their whole body's moving, And I think that's why a lot of people discourage people from drinking, because they don't want to deal with them, talking more, moving a little more and stuff like that. Yeah.
No, I don't want anybody drinking alcohol when I'm tattooing. I don't drink at all myself. I'm 100% sober. I don't mind being around people when they drink and if they choose to drink, but it's an atmosphere that I put myself into, so I accept that fact. But when people step into my studio and my chair, it's pretty much my rules, and I'm not gonna work around that element. Just because it doesn't tempt me at all, but I just don't want to introduce it into the process. I don't see any reason to. I think they can hold off for a session.
Do I mind if my client drinks during the tattoo? Nah, as long as he doesn't mind if I drink, because we're gonna drink together. You gotta share. Man, don't be greedy. If you got a bottle, or if you got a box of beers, I don't really drink beer, I drink more into my whiskey.
It's harder to work with, and sometimes I really don't like when they get belligerent. So I don't recommend my clients drinking, getting super heavily intoxicated. But if you wanna have a drink or two, crack something open before you get tattooed, loosen up, that's fine with me. But when you get belligerent and you start leaking all over the place, that's not okay.
if my clients drink alcohol, for sure, yeah. The day before, or because you know what happens is they come, they say nothing. Of course, no one comes into the shop and tells, oh, I was drinking last night, you know, and then they come, they start bleeding and all that stuff. And then you start asking, what happened? Are you sick? Are you stressed? Are you whatever? And of course you ask them, because you don't expect them to drink alcohol before a tattoo because it speaks for itself, don't do that. But of course you ask them, and then if they tell you, yes, I had some beers, you know, it's crazy, you know, they pay for it, and then we are at the same point we were 5 minutes ago. It heals not in the best way it could possibly heal, and then look at that, it became too light or too bright and all that stuff. So of course I tell them, and when this happens, I tell the people, you know, you have the problem now. If it heals not in a good way, it's not my fault. So it's not the best idea doing that.
I mean, if my client wanted to drink a little bit while they were getting tattooed, you're not really supposed to, but I mean, if it was a friend of mine, someone I was comfortable with, like maybe if we were doing like an after-hour tattoo, that's cool. I usually don't have a problem with that. But it's not something that we'd like to do in the shop during hours because it doesn't look good. And I'd prefer my clients to be of sound mind, and you just never want to take that risk. Something happens, or I'm not trying to be held responsible for things like that.
Everybody has always said, oh, they bleed too much. No, they don't bleed. I've got paper towels. I don't care how much they fucking bleed. It's their mannerisms and how they move, and they get their eye off the ball. You know, they're not focused on being still and being a good canvas.
I mean, in the UK, no one drinks alcohol while they're getting tattooed. It's not allowed. I know a lot of people that do, but I guess it's just never been an option when I've been tattooing or the places I've worked, so.
I mean, every person is different. If they're like a super gnarly alcoholic, then yeah, they can bleed a lot more, and it just makes the job rougher. But most of the time, the reason I don't want it is because, especially if I don't know them, it's because they tend to be animated and move around, and they're trying to talk to you, and you're like, oh, whoa, bro, like, you know, and it just makes everything worse. And it's like, they want to have a couple pops next door at the bar, and they're adults, and they can act like adults, but then if they come in and act like children, then it's like, oh, we're gonna definitely have a problem.
I don't mind if my client drinks during the breaks, not while I'm tattooing and he has to move, so he can grab his beer or his coffee or his water and he moves. And I can't, you know, I can't do a straight line. Yeah, no.
So like, that's like a snafu question for me, because in the shop, no, because it's a controlled environment, but we're here in California right now, getting ready for Golden State Tattoo Expo, and people walk around looking for artists, and they're walking around, people are drinking, it's the weekend. So I would rather not have them drinking, but it happens. So, I mean, there's a lot of catch-22s.
In my shop, there's a strict line. There are no drugs allowed, no alcohol, and if the customer shows up drunken to the appointment, I'll cancel the appointment. It's
a hard question. I don't mind if a customer drinks alcohol when it's a really, really close, a good friend of mine, because I know how they act when they're drinking alcohol. So if they drink just 1 or 2 beer, I don't care. But usually the customers can drink at my sessions.
I don't mind if my client drinks alcohol during the session, and probably I will drink with him. But I don't recommend to drink before the session. During the session, it's not a problem, to me at least.
I do mind, because I want them to be in that zone, to feel their own endorphins on getting tattooed. Some of them, they'll try to slip a drink in or two. You know, I'm gonna go be back in 5 minutes, and they come back smelling like it, but I'm more cautious. You know, I definitely see if they bleed out too much, and then I'll just cut the session right there.
I got a pretty strict, no drugs, no drinking, simply because people can get unpredictable sometimes. If it's a friend and he's like, hey, you mind if I have a beer? Fine. But you know, people getting gunned or hammered, no. And then they get kind of belligerent and they start fidgeting, they start a few beers in, 6-hour session, well, the effects of the alcohol will start to show. So they start leaking and it's not ideal. So I tend to be like, no.
So I did a tattoo on a drunk guy. It was pretty early in my career. He came in the shop, wanted a small cover up on his arm. And then 10 minutes later, we're talking about doing a big old Colorado script piece back of his whole head. And I'm like, yeah, I'm down for that. I'll hook you up with a good deal and all that. And so we sit down, we finally get it all drawn on and everything. He agrees to it, he looks at it, it's all cool. And then we tattoo it, and as soon as after we finally finish tattooing it, this guy's jumping, moving, he's confused on where I'm tattooing, nerves are here when I'm tattooing here. He thinks I'm tattooing his ear, and so towards the end of the story, he goes to look at the tattoo. I was like, hey, we're all done, check it out. He looks at it and he says, yeah, man, this is awesome, but you did it way too fucking big. He's like, you were probably supposed to do it like this. I was like, no way, dude. You saw the picture. I had the picture, showed him again. Like, you knew what you were signing up for. And so he walked out all mad, and he blamed it on me. And so at that time, I saw the guy a few weeks later, no visible tattoos. Told me he kind of regretted doing that tattoo. And so I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to be doing too many of those anymore. Not worth the hassle of people not sitting, jumping around, and not worth messing someone's life up potentially like that. So.